Welcome to Chop It and Chivs, two Blues legends looking back on the season where Chelsea finished 5th in the league and won the FA Cup for the first time under Antonio Conte. FA Cup final, you were there, Ron. Is winning the FA Cup, does that put a bit of a gloss on the season in the end?
I thought we started off quite well, but the longer the game went on, the more Manchester United come into the game. But as I said to somebody, there was a Manchester United supporter there, that if you ask people in a few months' time who won the FA Cup, they won't say Manchester United was unlucky, they'll say Chelsea.
In years gone by, winning the FA Cup 1-0 in the way they did with a couple of attacks and defending all the time wouldn't have been really acceptable. A lot of fans would have been unhappy with that, but all the Chelsea fans were happy that they'd won something, weren't they?
Well, I think that, as I say, obviously, it happened in our time where sometimes you can be a little bit fortunate, but, I think that, that obviously the Chelsea supporters have gone home happy because, we've won. But I think when you analyse everything, I think we only had something like 3 or 4 shots, whereas, being a Manchester United supporter, there's Manchester United supporters I know are not over keen on the style of football that Manchester United are playing under Jose Mourinho. But, I'm not a manager, but, when you speak to them, they're not all that happy with how they start the game and how they finish, because, it seems to be ultra defensive football, which normally years ago when we played, it was being battered for 90 minutes, especially up at Old Trafford. But that don't seem to be, the format. As I say, I'm not manager, but I think if you ask a lot of the Manchester United supporters, they're not particularly happy with the style of football that they play.
Gary, was it okay to win like that 1-0, just get the goal and sort of hang on for, 60, 70 minutes?
Well, I think the major thing before we even kicked off really was the lineup. In any sort of Manchester United team, you need someone like Romelu Lukaku to be playing, and it was a brilliant step for Chelsea that he wasn't, because I think if he had played, it'd have been a totally different game. Apparently he had a slight injury, he didn't want to be rested, he wanted to be sub. Well, that must have been a massive boost for our Chelsea back 4 or back 5, because with him not being up front, they had Rashford, and Rashford likes everything to feet and not getting in behind us, so he suited us down to a T. I think if they'd have had Romelu Lukaku, I think we would have seen a different Manchester United game, really.
Mourinho sort of gave the impression that Lukaku himself said, look, I'm not ready to play, I'm not fit, I don't mind coming on for the last 20 minutes to help you out. In your day, if you'd have said that to the manager, I'm not fit, but I'll sit on the bench, what would have happened then?
In our day, I was going to say it was completely different. I remember playing with injections in your back or injections in your knees, and you just got on with it. Now the player dictates, and you could tell that Mourinho weren't happy with Lukaku just sitting on the bench. And obviously they'd had words, but the player gets the nod nowadays. They're the one in control, really. And if he says he didn't want to play, he didn't want to play. But it certainly made our game a lot easier with Romelu Lukaku being on the bench.
You ever limped in with a bit of a limp going out?
I just find it strange that, if you can be on the bench, obviously you must be fit. I know things change, but I'm not saying that I need a pat on the back, but when we played Leeds, I had 2 cortisone injections prior to the game because I'd carried an injury leading into the final, and the only reason that I played was having the painkillers. But why not start off with Lukaku and see how he goes? For if things don't work out after 20 minutes, half an hour, you take him off. Why bring him on later on in the game? So I just find it strange that what you hear is that he didn't really want to play because he wasn't properly fit. Well, I just find it strange.
Only cost 75 million though.
Well, yeah. Maybe he was overdrawn in the bank.
He didn't need that bonus,
no,
did he?
That's true.
Just tell us what it's like lifting the FA Cup, because you were the first Chelsea captain to do that in 1970.
Well, we like in our time, as I said, the cup final was every footballer's ambition to play in a cup final. I played in the '66 cup final against the Spurs, what we lost 2-1, and 4 years later, after a replay, because the first game against Leeds was a draw, and we went up to Old Trafford about 2 weeks later, and it fulfilled an ambition of mine that we've got a FA Cup winners medal. It's a fantastic day. The only disappointing, without being disrespectful, is that it was up at Old Trafford, whereas it'd have been nice if we'd have won it at Wembley. But the only thing we got 2 appearance monies for. But no,
it's Lukaku coming out here.
No, it's a fantastic day, believe you me. But you've got to play in one and to win one to appreciate what the feeling's like. And especially we come back by train into Euston, and we had a open deck bus all the way from Euston, all round Chelsea and the Euston Road, and it's a fantastic feeling. And as I say, whatever people think, whether I was a mediocre player or a good player or what, I've got a cup winners medal.
Yeah. This year was a game Chelsea needed to win, though, wasn't it, really, Gary? Whatever the score was going to be, the end of the season, didn't matter who you played against. It was better against Man United, of course, but you just needed to win the game.
Yeah, and they set out in the right way. They defended first, and they defended really, really well. And like I said, if you've got no Romelu Lukaku running in behind you, everything that Rashford wants really is defeat. And the Chelsea back 4 or back 5 sat back anyway. Do you know what I mean? Letting him into feet, but they just couldn't get him behind us. And you have to say, looking at the back 4 of Manchester United, they were frightened to death when Eden Hazard got the ball. Anywhere where he got the ball on that day, and I think for the first 15 minutes, I don't think he had a kick because there were so many people around him. But as soon as we started giving them ball, you could see, especially the back 2, they were frightened to death. And obviously he got brought down for the penalty.
Yeah. Great result, great day in the end at Wembley. The season as a whole, as we look back at it, missing out the Champions League by a few points, how disappointing is that for a club like Chelsea these days?
Well, it's massively disappointing. That's what they go for every year. We was hoping, we was trying to claw back points on Tottenham, and in the end, it was just a hurdle too far from us, really. But we started off brightly, and the wheels went off. The wheels came off earlier on in the season when we played against a Manchester City side at home that absolutely ripped us apart. Although they only beat us by 1 goal, and Kevin De Bruyne, an ex-Chelsea player, of course, scored that wonderful goal. But we got ripped apart against Man City, and it really, after that, we struggled with the results.
Do you think that some of the tactics that were put out for Chelsea were incorrect, or weren't the right ones on the time? If you look at Manchester City in particular, we lost both games. We defended for 90 minutes in both games. Teams like Liverpool went out and played City at their own game and said, look, if you're going to beat us 4-0, we're going to get beat 4-0, but we might beat you. And in the end, they beat them a couple of times. Chelsea never had a chance of beating Manchester City, did they? The way the team was set out.
Well, I think the first time we had no chance. Second time, we just really, really sat back. It was more or less them trying to break us down. And don't forget, I think we improved when we brought in Giroud. With Morata up front, I thought he struggled to hold the ball up a lot of times, although he's quite quick and he can get in behind them. But I think holding the ball up, and that's what you need. If you're going to play defensively, you need a big lump up front who's going to hold it up. Someone like that we used to have, Diego Costa, who frightens defenders out of their skin when he holds the ball up, because he's strong, he gets round the ball, and he waits for the midfield to come up. In the end, the ball was going up front and it was coming straight back, and that's hard and disheartening for the midfield, defensive midfield, and the defenders.
You think Conte may have got it wrong? He was trying to play Morata in a Diego Costa role, and they're totally different players, aren't they?
Well, I think they're 2 different players. Costa is one of these fellas that goes around upsetting defenders, and I'm sure Chivs can tell you that with us being a defender, you don't like that. You know, when people are rattling you, you want to. Whereas, you know, I think that you know, going back to the Manchester City game, as I say, we're not managers, but you know, they used to say that years ago the best form of is you got to defend properly and then attack, but we never done that in any of the games. We allowed them to come on us, and they've got too many good players, I think, Manchester City, and although it's, you know, not good for me to say it, I think they would dominate the Premiership for a few years to come yet, Manchester City.
Well, they'll probably strengthen as well, which is pretty scary. We'll come on to that a bit later on. Let's talk about some of the players in at Chelsea, and in a minute I'm going to ask you for your player of the season, not just yet, and I don't know if you've got the same player of the season or not, but we'll see. Let's have a talk about some of them. And one that came up just about every week in Chopper and Chivs was Christensen at the centre half, a man that you really like.
Yeah, you know, when he first came into the side, I thought he'd done tremendously well. But I think the last few weeks, or the last few matches he played, he made one or two mistakes that I'm not saying unsettled him, but I think he's a tremendous prospect. He's a big, strong lad. Had what me and Chivs never had, pace. He's very quick.
Really.
And no, I think he's a hell of a player.
Yeah.